Consider This with Carol Schrader is made possible with support from Bass & Associates, First Data Resources, and by Nebraskans for Public Television. Consider This with Carol Schrader, a news and information program recorded on the campus of the University of Nebraska at Omaha. From the UNO Television Studios, here is your host, Carol Schrader.
Hello and welcome once again to Consider This. I say once again to the folks in the Omaha metro area, but if you're joining us on Educable, we are new to Educable, and so I'll say welcome for the first time. Our guest today, well, we're very proud to have the senior senator from the state of Nebraska as our first statewide guest. You know, we have to sort of cherish you while you're here, even if those that don't like you. We have to, you know, say we're only allowed so much more time with you.
You've been following me around for 16 years.
I know. I remember when Ben and Lindsay, your kids, at the inaugural, were just a little. They're how old now?
Ben's in his third year medical school, and Lindsay starts St. Mary's BSRN this fall.
Oh, that's amazing. You haven't slowed down, though, since you announced you're sort of retiring from public servants. You're in the middle of a number of frays.
Yeah, there's a lot of work. I mean, there's a lot of things going on, both in Washington and back in Nebraska, projects that we're trying to get either finished or far enough along they'll finish after I leave.
Well, since we're statewide for the first time, there are a couple of issues. Distance learning has been, web-based education, been major issues of yours. And I'm guessing that you would say that we're just not moving fast enough, particularly in the rural areas.
Well, we've come a long ways. We were the first state in the nation to be wired, have all of our schools hooked to the internet, thanks to the ESUs and some legislation around with them, and Governor Nelson got through. We have more computers per student than any state in the nation as well, thanks to NASA and a bunch of people that help contribute computers. But yeah, I think we've got a long ways to go. I mean, states, a school district will celebrate if they get 56 KB connectivity, and cable modems what they ought to have. I mean, the technology is available to bring them much broader bandwidth than they currently can get, with much richer content than they can currently get. And what's at issue is whether or not a student, a young boy or girl who's in school, is able to take the broad array of classes that are available. It's very expensive for a school district to organize a single class. And what the web offers is an opportunity to keep that offering very broad, even though you may only have one student that's interested in Russian. Thanks to the web, that student might be able to still be able to take Russian. So,
well, not even something like Russian, but kids now that are interested, and you went through the pharmacy school, are taking organic and inorganic chemistry in high school now, so that they can be a step ahead.
Well, that's right. I mean, we've got a project called class.com at the university. It's our correspondence division at the University of Nebraska, and we've converted it to the web. But you just find yourself saying, gosh, if we could just go faster. I mean, I would like to see the state make a bigger bet. I frankly think the state needs to change the law so that the power companies can get into telecommunications as well. We're one of the few states in the nation where that can't happen. And you can see states where that is possible. I mean, communities really have another option if they're able to, the law allows that to happen. So there's a lot more, it seems to me, that we could do. And not only are there educational benefits, but there's law enforcement benefits, there's health care benefits, and most importantly, there's job benefits. Businesses are making decisions today, and not always what you call .com businesses. Businesses are making decisions today about where they locate based upon the kind of connectivity and broadband capability that they've got in their community. So it's very much an issue of jobs and wealth and economic opportunity as well.
Well, you were governor for 8 years, and I think of some of the issues that are facing Nebraska. One of the biggest is, it involves, in a sense, education, long distance or otherwise, is the brain drain. Now, we've made some stopgap kind of moves right here at the University of Nebraska at Omaha, the Peter Kiewit Institute, you know, the information science, beautiful addition to the campus on Exarban. But we can't remain the Silicon Prairie if we can't stay 2 or 3 steps ahead of everyone else.
Well, that's quite right. And not only, in my view, the best way of doing that is just to pay attention to young people, invest both the time and money in them so that they succeed. I mean, Henry Cordes had a piece in the Omaha World Herald here, I guess a couple of weeks ago, talking about the dropout rate in college. And we have 46% of our students that start college graduate, but it's only 10% for African American and 8% for Latino. I mean, those are terrifying numbers.
Well, don't even talk about the high school dropout rate.
Well, that's
before you
right.
can get there.
So, I mean, I think we've got to find ways to make certain that young people who increasingly are being raised either by single parent or no parent, oftentimes. I mean, mom and dad are both working like mad, and they just aren't getting the support that they need. I think that my answer to the brain drain is to make certain that we don't lose any of our own kids. Make Nebraska an even more pro-child and child-friendly environment, and it's likely that we'll end the brain drain. It's much more likely our kids will stay here if they know that we love them, we care about them, and we're willing to invest both time and money in them.
But
and I think
you know,
we do. You know, we're one of the better states in the nation, but we've got a long ways to go.
There's things like state budgets. You had to worry about that. In fact, you had a drought many years ago and had to call a special session.
Right.
But the regions have been concerned about recruiting our own, keeping our own. We have teacher salaries that are an issue. Heck, you're not even going to stay in Nebraska. You're going to New York.
No, I'm going to stay. I get my business and run away.
You sure do. But how are we going to compete? We might keep them here for a while, but the lure is always out there. We don't, do we have to stay ahead? And do we have to come up with the money? Because our state budget is already pretty tight.
Well, again, some of it's not money. Some of it's just time. Some of it's volunteering and working with the mentoring programs that are available, the YMCA, the YWCA, Girls Club, Boys Club. Some of it's just saying, I'm going to take a weekend and spend time to help a young person.
Personal investment.
Yeah, it's personal investment. And I mean, it's surprising. I mean, both you and I still can remember what it was like to be a teenager. You just don't feel like anybody cares about you. And if you discover that they do, you'll fall in love with the state much more quickly. Oftentimes it takes us until we're in our 40s before we realize what a great place this is, and then oftentimes it's coming back. So,
but you got to keep us here till we're 40s.
Yeah, and I also think, I think we've also got a tremendous natural resource that we've got to develop. So I think the Missouri River is to Nebraska like the Rocky Mountains is to Colorado. And if you live in Omaha, Nebraska, it's not easy to get down on the river. So I think we need to develop the river as a recreational and environmental resource, because I think that river can be a tremendous asset.
Well, you
I
certainly
just canoed the Niobrara this past week.
If people haven't done that, they're missing out.
It's a beautiful state. It's a river state. It's a high plain state, and the place itself as a resource is for people to enjoy on the weekends and on their holidays. It seems to be something we also need to pay attention to. And if we do that, if we pay attention to our kids and take care of this resource that we've been given and develop it as a natural resource, I mean, that Missouri River could be an even bigger resource than it is for fish and wildlife. And increasingly, people are looking, 90% of the people in the state don't go to Eppley Airfield, as good as airfield as it is, on their vacations. They look for something to do on the weekends. And if it becomes a place where people feel much more comfortable taking off and using them in their free time, then I think that adds a second dimension to our ability to stop the brain drain.
We talk a lot in our state about gasoline prices, as they are throughout the Midwest. They're coming down, but we have a kind of a double issue here. From the farmers and producers' point of view, we have the ethanol issue. And then we have, which has been partially blamed for that spike in...
Yeah, by the oil companies.
Yeah.
The oil companies blame it.
I know. Are we still going to look into this, even though the pressure's off and the Saudis are going to sell us oil at a lower price? Are we going to take the pressure off? What are the market forces that really affect the price of gas here?
Well, I mean, the market forces is that we've got a limited supply, which we've not been developing very rapidly, and we've got increasing demand. I mean, that's what's going on. And in this part of the region, we had two big pipelines that got shut down, and as a consequence, there were supply shortages. Although, you look at the profits that the oil companies have right now, and they have 500–600% increases. They don't seem to me to be hurting at the moment. I think it's worthwhile investigating whether or not there's any price fixing, but my guess is we're going to discover it's supply and demand. We've got tremendous supply problems, and we import over 50% of our oil, and I think it's terribly important as a part of our energy policy to develop non-renewable, renewable energy sources, such as ethanol and ETBE and other sorts of things that are renewable like that. But I think it's also very important for us to develop some kind of conservation strategy.
That's pretty much gone out the window.
Yeah, I mean, you ask.
I mean, I have
you
an
ask
SUV
Americans-
and I feel guilty
you ask
every time I drive it.
well, you know, either, yeah, I mean, you ask Americans, 80% of the people in the United States of America today say that the high oil prices are the consequence of OPEC, and 75% say it's a consequence of the oil companies.
And
less
nobody
than-
looks at
And less
themselves.
than 5% say it's a consequence of increased consumption on their part. And, you know, there's no question that OPEC can control things. The Saudis increase production 5.5%, and the price goes down immediately. There's no question that they're in the driver's seat in terms of supply, and there's no question as well that the possibility that the oil companies may be taking advantage of the situation, as you might expect to happen in this situation. But there's also no question that consumption is driving a lot of this, that we're consuming an awful lot of non-renewable energy sources, and those non-renewable energy sources are expensive, and they're coming from oftentimes non-American businesses.
We heard rumblings in the beginning of the Senate race when we still had the primaries going, you know, that and the prices were going up in gasoline, that the candidates, particularly the Republicans, were going to, you know, get rid of those radical environmentalists and get that ANWR area opened in Alaska. What about that? That is a huge pool of oil, but it also has some environmental concerns. If you're in favor of kind of holding off or being careful, are you a radical environmentalist?
I don't think so. I don't think it's a radical environmental position to say that you want to conserve natural resources, that there's limits to what you'll exploit, that there's limits to what you'll develop just in the name of either profit or having to being able to avoid a change in our own behavior in order to accomplish an objective of balancing our supply and demand. No, I don't think it's radical at all to want to preserve ANWR. I think it's a resource that once you develop it, it's gone forever. I mean, it's equally priceless as the oil itself. I mean, once the oil is gone, it's gone forever as well. So, I mean, I don't think it's radical at all to want to preserve that natural resource, preserve that wilderness.
But we only hear the wilderness end of it, although that's probably in itself worthy of consideration, at least.
Yeah,
as opposed to keeping a reserve that we really have in our hip pocket.
Yeah, I mean, we have a strategic reserve that we could release and have a positive. It would reduce prices. No question that would be something that would be beneficial. But overall, you can't alter the laws of supply and demand. If the demand is going up and you keep supply the same, and I don't think there's going to be any radical change in that, by the way. I mean, I think we're going to face tremendous problems with natural gas this next winter. I mean, I think we're going to be short. There could be blackouts or brownouts this summer as a result of shortages in some parts of the country if we get unusually high temperatures. So, I mean, we take this energy supply of ours for granted oftentimes, and we shouldn't. And there's a connection between what we demand and what that price is going to be.
Gee, somebody forgot to take Econ 101.
Yeah, well,
or at least
I fell
remember.
asleep during it.
It is a little boring at times.
Yeah.
The current situation, where do we stand right now on the situation with the drought? I mean, it's been pouring here in the eastern part of the state. It's a very complex problem, I know, but you're still having, as a senator, and Senator Hagel, having to deal with the Department of Agriculture on drought issues.
Right. We got 35 counties, I think, right now that have been cleared to pay their CRP, the Conservation Reserve Program land that's been set aside. No, we still have drought conditions in well over a third of the state. That the rain is certainly welcome and reduces the negative impact of the drought. But the drought's just one more illustration of why this current Freedom to Farm program is a bad program. I mean, it makes the case that agriculture is different than any other business. There is no other business that has to worry about losing an entire year's income as a consequence of insufficient rain or too much rain or hail or tornado. I mean, I had a tornado in 1975 wipe my business off the face of the map. We only lost 4 months' sales. We didn't lose an entire year's sales. We rebuilt, we reopened, and come September we were back in business. Well, not so with a farm. A farm can get hit with a tornado and lose its entire year's income. Plus, you've got international factors. I mean, everybody in '96 was saying, well, we're going to export our way out of the problem. And supporters of Freedom to Farm are saying, well, there's lots of things that we didn't do. Well, we couldn't have controlled the decline of the baht in Thailand in 1997, the collapse of the Asian economy, and the Europeans are going to continue to protect their marketplace. We're spending record amounts of money, $32 billion just thus far this year, and maybe 40 by the time the year is over, and farmers don't have a sufficient amount of income in the form of a safety net. So, I mean, I think the drought and our response to the drought will illustrate why it's necessary to go back to having a publicly held reserve, some kind of set aside in recognition of the fact that we can always produce more than we consume in any one year, or we can export in any one year, and try to come up with a cheaper, more effective way to balance the needs of the producers against the needs of the consumer.
You know, I look at the rest of business today, and deregulation and a lot of other factors have mean that the big fish are constantly swallowing up the small ones, and leads to, you know, all kinds of things: economy of scale, better bottom line. I don't know where all that's going to stop, but then you look at the farmer, and it's part of you that maybe didn't fall asleep during that economics class has got to say, the family farmer is an endangered species. I mean, just for looking at the way the market works, the competitiveness.
Well, I think
I hope not.
It's certainly true that farmers are having to adjust and use technology and computers and better business practices. There's no question that a farmer's got to be a good business person, or they're not going to survive.
But when they have no control over the cost of what they're selling for, they have very little control, if any, at times, over, assuming they have a good crop, they haven't been hit by too much water, not enough, selling their crop.
Well, but they, first of all, I favor a much different safety net than we've got right now. The Freedom to Farm is by no means a market-oriented program. You look at what we do for cotton, or look at what we do for rice, or lots of other program crops. Corn and milo and wheat are about the only thing left that are strictly Freedom to Farm, plus the additional AMTA payments that we paid out the last 3 years. But a farmer's got to think about the marketplace. You can't just grow product and then say, well, I'm going to sell it. I mean, when you say that they don't control their destiny, oftentimes they do control their destiny. So I think the program can't guarantee a profit for anybody that's got a couple hundred acres that they're growing corn. But you're right in that if you want to keep independent family-based businesses, if you want to have a rural policy that promotes growth in the rural communities, if you want to have policies that keep the big fish from just getting bigger and bigger, then I think that you do have to have a different kind of program than we've got right now, with higher loan rates, with a set aside of the publicly held reserve that enables us to say to the farmers that the market's going to produce a price for you that enables you to have a fighting chance to survive as an independent entity.
Okay. Now, let's do some rapid fire work here. We've got about 10 minutes of the show left. So you've actually been very good of not giving too long of answers.
Okay.
And I'm just pleased as punch. You have been very involved in, as we said, the distance learning, connectivity of Nebraska, the whole issue of internet taxes, internet, just the power of the internet, and how it will influence other businesses. Where do you stand on sales tax for internet? Things I buy over the internet, and I buy a few things.
I think the playing field needs to be level. If I pay a sales tax on something you buy in a store, I ought to pay sales tax on something I buy on the web. It shouldn't be discriminatory. It shouldn't be higher in either place. And
why is it such any tax? I mean, just the word tax and internet is just politically volatile.
Well, because some people, I think, have misdescribed it as a new tax. It's certainly a new way of buying things, but it's not a new tax. It's a tax on the sale of a product. And it would be enormously discriminatory if we said you're not going to pay any tax on the web, but you are going to pay a tax if you go to a shopping center to buy it. I mean, it basically say, we're going to create an unlevel playing field and discourage people from building buildings, hiring people in the local community. So what I've favored is elimination of discriminatory taxes on the web, not the elimination of taxes altogether. We ought to use this as an opportunity to level the playing field so the taxes are equalized from one environment to the other. And simple software can solve this problem. This is not a difficult problem.
The software exists.
Yeah, this is not a difficult problem for us to solve.
The Senate race to win your seat. What are the big issues? Is the abortion issue going to be as huge as it at least seems to be right now?
I think it probably will not. I think both Ben and Don have the same position on it.
But the pro-life people have seemed to been down on Ben, no matter what he says, for years.
Yeah, I think they had a more legitimate issue. If I had run, I mean, Don and I would have diametrically opposed positions. I don't believe the government should be interfering with a woman's right to make a decision for the first and second trimester. I think that the state has no right to come in and interfere with that decision. And third, fine. And late term, fine. That would have been a clear line. But I think Ben and Don have almost identical positions.
So what are the issues going to be given what's happening nationally in Senate races?
I think the economy, I think agriculture is going to be a very big issue. I think education is still going to be a huge issue. I mean, how you view investing in our children is going to be a very big issue. I think health care is still a big issue. We've got 1 out of 7 of our businesses are self-employed, and they're having a heck of a time today. We've got big increases in the cost of private health insurance. Prescription drug benefit is going to be a big issue. Social Security is going to be a big issue. I think there's going to be plenty of issues out there once the campaign heats up after Labor Day, and I think Ben's going to have the better of those arguments.
Social Security.
Mm-hmm.
You have patiently and sometimes not so patiently kept pounding away at what you think. You said it's not in crisis.
It's not in crisis.
And that obviously you're not into the scare tactics that have been used in the past politically. But you do, Moynihan, you're still in league. It always sounds negative. But you're still working with a group of senators trying to get some, shift the way we invest in Social Security.
Right. Well, I mean, first, there's 2 issues. One is there are 500 members of Congress who support what I call the Do Nothing Plan. They put their name on it. There are 35 of us that have endorsed a specific solution. And the Do Nothing Plan has consequences for 150 million Americans under the age of 40 who will have a 25 to 33% cut in their benefit, which is why people under the age of 30 more likely believe in UFOs than they do that Social Security is going to be there for them. So although it's not in crisis, it is, I think, wrong for those of us who are over 50 to say, well, we got our deal covered, why do we need to worry about it? Because Social Security is an intergenerational program. I allow myself to be taxed on behalf of people who are beneficiaries in exchange for somebody else when I'm a beneficiary.
That's right.
Well, and right now we've got an intergenerational shaft going on for people under the age of 40. So that's issue number 1. Issue number 2 is all Social Security does is transfer income. And if you talk to somebody who's over the age of 70, let's say, who's in good health, expects to live another 10, 15, 20 years, who has only Social Security as a source of income, which is almost 70,000 Nebraskans right now, you talk to them, and it breaks your heart to describe what would be impossible if we'd have taken a little bit of that income and put it into savings or some kind of wealth account, a mutual fund, or something that would enable them to generate wealth and security that comes with owning assets independent of what you're being transferred. So I mean, the problem is we've got a long-term problem, and there's not a lot of political rewards, as you know, for solving those things. But we're making progress. We've got more people co-sponsoring than we did 2 years ago, and I think eventually we'll solve it.
Neither Bush nor Gore seem to be, I mean, they talk about it. They have plans, but they don't seem to be plans. Am I reading this wrong?
You're reading it exactly right. They have a disagreement, and there's going to be a good debate about this idea of helping people generate wealth. The Vice President has Social Security Plus. He has individual savings accounts using income taxes. The governor uses it inside the Social Security system with the payroll tax, which is what I have supported. Neither one of them have proposed solutions to the long-term problem. And one of the things I should point out in mine, running the risk of being too long-winded, is that ours is very progressive and much more beneficial to low and moderate income people, because we open accounts early at birth with $1,000, and then we make it possible, regardless of your income, to get up to about $800 a year in contribution. So applying progressive values, in my view, is important anytime you come in and try to fix Social Security.
I don't know where we stand on, several months ago we went through the argument over the budgets. We're in a better budget situation than we thought we were going to be, so we should, cut taxes. Or should we take some of that money and prop up Social Security? Or what is our current situation? What should we do with that money if there is some money available?
Well, I think we should fix Social Security, and rather than just talk about it. But unfortunately, too many people say fix Social Security first. We have overwhelming support for a Social Security lockbox, for example. And you listen to the rhetoric, you'd think everybody in Congress is supporting some plan, but they're not. They're supporting a Social Security lockbox, and they're supporting delaying action on Social Security itself. And the longer you delay, by the way, the harder the problem is, and the more difficult the problem is to solve. So, I mean, I favor doing that. Now, there is both good news and bad news in this. We're spending out as a percent of total U.S. income, we're spending out at a level that we haven't seen since 1962, below 18% of GDP. So we're spending out at very low levels right now of total income. We're taxing almost 2 points more than we have of GDP, which is an awful lot of money. That we're almost $200 billion a year.
So could we do both?
Absolutely.
We could cut back on the
yeah,
taxation.
It is the people's money. I mean, it's
well, yeah.
The surplus comes about as a consequence of a tax on people in excess of what we need to pay the bill. So if you're going to pay down the debt, fine. I favor paying down the debt, although there's a limit to that. I mean, in 2007, there's not going to be bonds out there for us to buy. People don't have to sell their bonds. We're going to have a tough time paying off debt. People want to hang on to those treasuries.
They want to cash them in.
They won't want to cash them in. So it's very good news that the economy is growing like it is, and we're able to pay down the debt, and we're finally got rid of the deficit. It's one of the great accomplishments that I feel I played a part in over the last 12 years. And we're just not used to dealing with these kinds of surplus. But I think there's room for us to do a tax cut. I think there's room for us to fix Social Security and pay down the debt. And there's room to celebrate, and the celebration, I hope, enables us to preserve the fiscal discipline that enables us to get where we are today.
My feeling as a taxpayer, though, is the longer we just talk about it, you know, they'll find somewhere to spend that money.
Well, your feeling
is that worries me.
Well, you've watched legislative bodies before, and so you're
yeah, it
quite
takes
right.
about 5 minutes to figure out how they operate.
You're quite right. I mean, there's such a temptation to spend it. I mean, everybody's coming into town into Washington right now, into your nation's capital, asking for more and more spending. I mean, conservatives, you've watched the legislative process before and know how somebody who defines themselves a fiscal conservative can be a big spender in a hurry when an interest group comes and says that we want more money for prescription drug benefit, military retirees.
What's going to happen
blah,
with the prescription drug? We've got about a minute. I mean,
well,
that is a viable issue.
It's a huge issue because more and more health care is being shifted over to pharmaceuticals, and the cost has gone up almost 20% just this year. The problem is we've got 50-some percent of the American people that have less than $1,000 of prescription expenditures every year. We've got some with great need, but we've got some without it. And the question is, how do we pay for it without driving costs even higher, which we could
providing
do.
a safety net for those that
right. I mean,
are in grave trouble.
Exactly. We could provide a safety net for people who are in grave trouble, but if we provide it for everybody, suddenly we're subsidizing people that don't need it, and we could. The paradox could be all that new money coming into the system could increase the cost of pharmaceuticals, not decreasing.
We're out of time. I hope we can arrange, because you're going to be busy towards the end of your term, to come back and do a Bob Kerrey retrospective.
That's great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us, Senator Bob Kerrey. And thank you for joining us in the Omaha Metro and throughout the state of Nebraska.
Consider This with Carol Schrader is made possible with support from Bass & Associates and First Data Resources.